introduce one. Thank you, Sarah Beth. And I'm going to introduce one more fabulous person who's joined us tonight. Her name is Janice Sykes, or Sykes, yes. Janice, she is the college advisement coordinator with the LA Unified School District, and I'll hand it off to her.
Hi, thank you for having me tonight. Like Kim said, my name is Janice Sykes. I'm the College Advisement Coordinator for our Los Angeles Unified School District. And we're really happy to be able to partner with CSAC on these webinars because we know how important it is to get financial aid information out to families. We know that the application process has been a struggle this year. It really does take a village to get through this. And with partners like CSAC, and because of this partnership, we've been able, LAUSD has been able to achieve the highest completion rate in the state since March. So these webinars have been so informative. It's been so crucial to get this information out to our families. They rely heavily on these webinars, the recordings and the messages and the updated information, the live stream that Sarah Beth does. All of this has been crucial. And because of that, we are at 85% completion, actually 85% submission for LAUSD students, which is amazing. So we are so thankful to CSAC for being able to provide the support. And we also are so grateful to the families who have shown up to all the virtual office hours, to our in-person office hours. Like, you haven't given up and neither have we, and we're going to work together until we can get this done. So thank you to everyone. So I'm going to pass it back to CSAC and let's get more information. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Janice. All righty, folks. Let's see, we're gonna get started. And then we do have a quick 5-minute break in between the California DREAM Act application, CADAA, and FAFSA. So don't worry that we're going to be sitting here the whole hour and a half. I will be turning off my camera just for bandwidth issues, and it's a little distracting to see myself. But all right, we're going to get started. So thanks, everyone, for coming to tonight's presentation. Let's see. So tonight's webinar are for folks who have non-SSN contributors or students from mixed status families. We talked about the Spanish translation already, and tonight's presentation is going to be recorded. So y'all be able to see this at a later time on our YouTube as well as our website. Please note this information we are presenting today is accurate as of today. So if processes change, please make sure you are signed up for our email listserv or follow us on our social media platforms, which Sarah Beth will cover again at the end of our presentation. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, all the good stuff to make sure you get the most up-to-date information. We want to make sure that y'all leave here with all the information you need. Traditionally, this presentation is about an hour, but because of all the changes that's been happening, we want to make sure we give you all the information, and we have to extend this presentation just a little bit longer. And then friendly reminder again, we do have the Q&A function that's enabled down below. So go ahead and answer put your questions down there. Sarah Beth, as well as Israel, my colleagues, are answering your questions. And then when we switch over, Sarah Beth will present, and then Israel and I will be answering your questions. All right. Okay, so welcome to our special webinar, CSAC's addressing this ongoing barriers faced by students completing a FAFSA with contributors who do not have a social security number, also known as an SSN. This information is invaluable for students, families, and financial aid professionals serving the student population. Before we begin, it's important to note that this slide deck will not be shared because due to the rapidly changing information, but we will have that recording available to y'all. Let's see, we'll also be sending out one of the slides, which is our resources slide for folks who have registered for this webinar. Okay. Okay, and then please be aware that this webinar will not offer much assistance to students with contributors who do have SSNs. If you require general help with FAFSA or CADAA, we do encourage you to attend one of our general webinars. It's listed on California or on castudentaid.org/C, the number 4 and C. And you can scan that QR code on the slide. All right. This financial aid season has been like no other. A series of barriers have emerged for students and their families, especially for students who have contributors on FAFSA who don't have an SSN. Parents and spouse contributors are facing an uphill battle in creating accounts on studentaid.gov. They are facing challenges in getting their identities verified, and even with verified accounts, they're experiencing issues with receiving their parent invitation or being able to sign the FAFSA. The workarounds offered have not always worked, and these students and families continue to bear the burden of the unresolved issues with the FAFSA. CSAC is here to present as many solutions as we can to assist students in completing their financial aid application. It's not just you. There are many students and families in a tough situation this year because some of the people in their family do not have an SSN. CSAC is committed to helping y'all navigate through this challenging financial aid season. Our goal in this webinar is to give y'all as much information to make an informed decision about what you should do next to complete your financial aid application. All right, it's no secret that there have been a number of barriers during this season. Since FAFSA opened in December of 2023, there have been numerous technical issues that have impacted many families. And then, like I've been saying the last couple of slides, most of the barriers have been affecting students who have parents who don't have an SSN. Okay, understanding financial aid. So we're going to start by covering some of the basics of financial aid, and then we'll talk in depth about the options for students with non-SSN contributors, including the CADAA for mixed status families option and different options for FAFSA. We'll also cover many major barriers faced by students who have non-SSN contributors and workarounds that we have seen. Financial aid can be confusing, we understand. This is a flow chart here on the screen to help break down the financial aid process for you and CSAC's role in that process. As a student applying for or attending college, you may have a financial situation that means you need assistance for paying for college, and that's most students. The cost of college is becoming more expensive now that almost everyone needs financial help. A student completes a financial aid application, which is a FAFSA or CADAA, which is the second icon on the left right here, in order to apply for federal or state financial aid or both. The information you report on your financial aid application helps determine your financial need. Then the financial aid office, it's their job to get you as much money as possible based on the information you put on your FAFSA or CADAA. CADAA filers can only receive state and institutional financial aid. FAFSA filers can receive both state, institutional, but also receive federal student aid. The CADAA now FAFSA application, the CADAA for mixed status families will give y'all the ability to apply for some of your financial aid now and apply for the rest of it later with the FAFSA when the technical problems have been resolved. If you get a little overwhelmed, don't worry, we're gonna break it down for y'all tonight. And then again, that Q&A function is down below. So if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in there and my colleagues will answer them. Okay, can I apply for FAFSA if my parents don't have an SSN? The answer is yes. Students who are U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents are able to apply for financial aid through the FAFSA. Parent citizenship doesn't affect a student's eligibility, so it's okay if a parent doesn't have an SSN. Starting with this year's application cycle, 24-25, everyone is required to have a studentaid.gov account to complete the FAFSA and sign in. This includes undocumented parents or parents who live in another country. These parents will go through an alternate verification process, which we'll cover in a couple minutes. There is no more paper signature for the FAFSA. All parents will need to sign the application electronically, regardless of citizenship status. Students will use the My Parent Doesn't Have an SSN box. It used to be that you could enter 9 zeros in the box, but that option doesn't work anymore. Parents can use their DACA SSN to create a studentaid.gov account. Students who have a DACA SSN are not eligible for FAFSA, but you should complete the California Dream Act application, also known as CADAA. Dependent students. The issue of non-SSN contributors is mostly affecting dependent students. FAFSA will determine a student's dependency status, and a student can't choose to just be independent. If you're considered dependent, then you need to provide parent information on the FAFSA, even if your parent is undocumented or lives in another country. Students can be considered dependent even if they live on their own, pay their own bills, or if the parent does not claim the student on their taxes. The student can still be considered dependent. This is because tax dependency and financial aid dependency are two different elements. If a parent refuses to provide information on the FAFSA, the student can only be considered for direct unsubsidized loans. They will not be eligible for any grants or scholarships from the federal government or from the institution. Okay, students born before January 1st, 2001 are considered independent for the 24-25 academic year. Everyone else will need to answer these personal circumstance questions. FAFSA will ask you to select these circumstances if they apply to you. If you are married, in the military, in grad school, or have a child, and you can report that on the FAFSA and be considered independent. If both of your parents have died, you were in foster care, or you were legally emancipated by the court, or are currently under legal guardianship, you are considered independent. The last question asks about the students who are homeless or at risk of being homeless or maybe unaccompanied. If you answer no to all these questions, you are dependent for financial aid purposes. That means your parents has to provide their financial information on your financial aid application. Most high school seniors will answer no to all of these questions and be considered dependent students for the purposes of financial aid consideration. Families can be made up of different types of arrangements, but for financial aid, a parent means something very specific. It must be a mom or dad who legally adopted the student, a step-parent, an aunt, uncle, foster parent, grandparent, older sibling, or legal guardian cannot be considered a parent. If one of the student's parents is alive and can be contacted, they must sign the application. This is true even if the parent lives in another country. In rare cases, there is no contact between a student and both of their parents. These are extraordinary circumstances like refugees, asylees, human trafficking, or abusive parents. In these cases, the student should select the unusual circumstances box on FAFSA or CADAA. The college is empowered to help students who have unusual circumstances by overriding their dependency status. Some of y'all might be wondering which taxes I need to, input for the FAFSA and CADAA. And that's a good question. So you'll need taxes from 2 years ago, and that rule applies every year. You apply for financial aid. So for the 24-25 academic year, you'll be needing taxes from 2022. Let's see. So starting with this 24-25 academic year, FAFSA will require direct data exchange, DDX, with the IRS for all FAFSA filers. CADAA filers will continue to input their financial information manually. The DDX for FAFSA will reduce the number of errors families make when inputting the wrong information for tax year. You probably haven't filed taxes yet for 2023 by the time it's time to file for your financial aid. So the process is that there's an assumption that your parents have completed their taxes from 2 years ago. So that's why they have that rule in place. Okay, with our financial aid program, CSAC administers financial aid for the state of California. We have several different programs we administer, but we're most well known for our Cal Grant program. We're also known for our middle class scholarship, abbreviated for MCS. A lot of students don't know that they can get both Cal Grant and MCS if they have enough unmet financial need. Moreover, we have a grant for foster youth called the Chiefy Grant, which helps students who were in foster care to help to receive additional aid to help them pay for college. If you'd like to learn more about our 5 programs on the slide, you can scan that QR code you see on the left side of the screen. You can also visit csac.ca.gov/financial-aid-programs. A quick pointer, Cal Kids is a program administered by the State Treasury's Office. Our program or our agency works closely with them, but is not administered by CSAC. But we'll have a slide on that to cover what that program is about later. Cal Grant appeal. Because of all these issues this year, CSAC is allowing students to appeal for Cal Grant consideration, even if they did not submit their application by the priority deadline, which was May 2nd. If you did not submit your FAFSA or CADAA before May 2nd, 2024, here's how you can still appeal for Cal Grant consideration. You want to log into your Web Grants for Students account to confirm your FAFSA and CADAA submission date. You have to complete a FAFSA or CADAA before you appeal. The Cal Grant Appeals G18 form should be completed by students who were unable to submit a FAFSA or CADAA on time due to circumstances beyond the student's control, such as issues we are discussing today. 24-25 FAFSA CADAA applicants who submitted a partial or incomplete application by the May 2nd priority deadline do not need to appeal. I'm going to repeat myself. 24-25 FAFSA CADAA applicants who submitted a partial or incomplete application by the May 2nd deadline do not need to appeal. Students who still need their FAFSA contributors to complete their contributors section, or are missing a contributor signature, or need to make corrections to their applications, they just still need to complete that process. You don't need to complete the appeals that we're talking about on this slide here. Okay, you do not need to do the appeals process if you're planning to attend community college in the fall, unless you are a high school senior. High school seniors should try to appeal for the May 2nd deadline because it will set you up for success in your entire college career with an entitlement award that is specific for graduating high school seniors. The Cal Grant appeal form is a one-page form that you can get on our website. The web address is at the bottom of the screen, which is castudentaid.org/CalGrantAppeal. When you complete the form, make sure you select on-time application reconsideration and FAFSA/CADAA technical issues. You can complete the rest of the form and submit it to student support at csac.ca.gov. You see that email is on the screen as well. I want to remind y'all that appeals are for students who tried to complete a FAFSA or CADAA before the deadline, but were not able because of technical issues happening this year. Okay, let's turn our attention to the applications. We're going to start off talking about CADAA, California Dream Act application. CADAA has traditionally been a pathway for qualified immigrants, including undocumented students in California, to receive state and institutional financial aid. California is one of 17 states that provides state-based financial aid to undocumented students. Students who apply for financial aid using the CADAA are eligible for state aid programs such as Cal Grant, middle class scholarship, and institutional aid from the college or university they attend. We now know that CSAC is offering CADAA as an option for students and families who have been struggling to complete the FAFSA and submit a financial aid application. The CADAA is an alternative application for FAFSA administered by CSAC, that's us. We've opened the application for all mixed status families who face extraordinary barriers to completing FAFSA. CADAA will allow you to apply for state and institutional aid, but you can't apply for federal aid like Pell Grant or work study with CADAA. Later on, you will need to complete the FAFSA if you want to be considered for federal financial aid. We're going to walk through how to complete the CADAA so you can be successful with the application. First, you'll need to create an account on dream.csac.ca.gov. Under the login button on the left, there is a place to create an account. Please make an account before you log in to start your application. You will not be able to use your existing Web Grants for Students account. You will need to create a new account to complete the CADAA. CADAA will ask very specific questions or very similar questions to the FAFSA, including your demographic information, financial information, parent demographics, and financial information. And both you and your parent will need to sign and submit the application. Use the QR code on the slide to get to the login page for the CADAA. There is no parent account process on CADAA. Parent will sign within the student's application. The new CADAA application for mixed status families is a workaround for ongoing issues with FAFSA. CADAA will allow students who are struggling to complete FAFSA lock in a submission date and receive an estimated award package from their college. Some students, this might be a faster option to a financial aid award package if they are continuing to have trouble with the FAFSA. Let's see, and then CADAA does not replace the FAFSA, and students who complete CADAA now should continue to attempt to complete a FAFSA, so you can be considered for federal student aid. Once a student completes FAFSA, CSAC will convert the record in our system so that the student can be awarded as a FAFSA student. FAFSA does have a much longer deadline than other forms of financial aid, but the longer you wait, the longer it will take to receive all the possible financial aid available to you. So completing the FAFSA as soon as possible will allow you access to the most financial aid available to you. I want to let you know that CADAA can only be sent to California schools. So for students who are planning to study out of state, this is not the option for you. We will be discussing FAFSA at length in the second half of the presentation. During the new account registration process, the student will be presented with 4 questions. The student should begin by selecting yes to this question regarding having a social security number. Selecting yes will allow the student to complete the CADAA. Please make sure the student reads the details on the screen that covers CADAA for mixed status families process. Second question will ask if the student obtained their SSN through DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, and that their social security is for work purposes only. FAFSA-eligible students completing a CADAA for mixed status families should answer no to this question. The third question will ask if the student, if they are a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. The blue box explains the definition of an eligible non-citizen, such as having a permanent resident card or asylum granted status. FAFSA eligible students should answer yes to this question. The fourth question will address the FAFSA specifically. It will ask the student if they have a non-SSN contributor, if they are encountering issues or errors when attempting to file a FAFSA, and if they prefer to file a CADAA for now. This section also includes a disclaimer that answers these questions. This section will also include a disclaimer that answers to these questions will not be shared with federal agencies. Finally, there's a note about how the student can maximize their potential financial aid eligibility by completing the CADAA now and working on the FAFSA later. The student should answer yes to this question by clicking continue. The student will move on to the registration page. The CADAA option for mixed status families is available for all mixed status students. If a student has completed a FAFSA in the previous year, I think, yeah, that's pretty much, that's all I meant to say for that slide. State of residence and marital status, both the student and parent will need to report their state of residence. This question has been confusing for many students and parents. Despite the wording, this question has nothing to do with being documented or having paperwork. This question is asking about physical presence in a state. This question is also asking about moving to a state without the intention of moving somewhere else. So if you moved to California in April 2016 and did not plan to move anywhere else, put April 16 for this question. Both students and parents have to answer this question, and the phrase legal residence can be confusing, but it's really asking about physical presence, not paperwork. Students will also be asked about their marital status. If a student is married, they don't have to provide parent information, but they do have to provide spousal information on the CADAA. Students will also be asked to manually report their financial information on CADAA. CADAA does not have IRS DDX, which is direct data exchange the way the FAFSA does. If a student did not work and will not file taxes, they can select no. They will still be asked what income they made in the reporting year, which is 2022. If the student made no income during that year, they'll input 0. If a student did file taxes, they will need to enter their financial information as prompted in the financial section. It will be helpful for the student to have a copy of their tax documents available to answer the questions. Students can also list up to 20 colleges on this slide. We strongly recommend students list at least one UC, one CSU, and one community college in this section. Listing schools here does not mean you're applying to those schools, and it doesn't mean you're committing to go there. It just allows the schools that you list to have access to your financial need information so they can tell you how much financial aid you can receive if you were to attend their school. Parent information. Parents will also need to provide their personal information on the CADAA, including their name, date of birth, and address. They will also answer demographic questions and provide financial information. Parents have to input their financial information manually, just like the student. So please be prepared to have your tax and employment documents ready when you're completing the parent section of the CADAA. On the CADAA, every question has a gray circle with an I in it. This is the information button. Clicking on it can answer general questions about how you should answer each question. This is especially helpful in the tax section of the CADAA, where the questions can be confusing. Since CADAA doesn't have DDX, students and parents need to input their 2022 tax information manually. Like I mentioned, it's helpful to have both your tax information if the student and parent filed in 2022. If both parents worked in 2022, both parents will need to input their tax information on CADAA, even if they file taxes jointly. If a parent didn't file taxes in 2022, they can select no on the screen. They will be asked to input their income for 2022. Even if that number is 0, go ahead and put 0 on that question, on that line. If parents indicate they have not or are not going to file taxes, they will still have to indicate any earnings they have made. If they made more than what the IRS considers a threshold for filing taxes, then the application will be flagged and the parents will then have to get an ITIN and file for taxes. The financial section of the CADAA, we talked about, it has the gray circles with the I for additional information. They lay out exactly where to find the information on your tax documents. We know that entering tax information can be misleading, and a really common error that both students and parents make is reporting the same dollar amount for their adjusted gross income and the amount of taxes they paid, or the amount they paid in income tax. Most likely those numbers are two different numbers. Students and parents should be careful and take their time filling out the tax information section. Mistakes can be fixed, but it can delay a student's award package. Once student and parent tax information has been entered, the signature page will appear. The signature section of the application will ask the student to select only one parent who is able to provide the signature. Like the student, the selected parent will check a box that says the information they provided on the application is true, and they'll click the submit button. The drawn signature will be auto-generated. Once both the student and the one parent signs the CADAA, the application will be submitted. Once the CADAA has been signed and submitted, the student will see the CADAA confirmation page. This page will display the Student Aid Index, SAI, which is a key component of financial aid eligibility consideration. We strongly recommend that the student prints a copy of this page, takes a photo, or saves a digital copy for their records. Hey, don't forget about your FAFSA. If you're choosing to complete the CADAA now, that doesn't mean you should stop trying to complete a FAFSA. CADAA will give you some of the important information you need to make decisions about college, and completing FAFSA as soon as possible will allow you access to the most financial aid available to you. Remember, students who apply for financial aid using the CADAA are eligible for state aid programs such as Cal Grant, Middle Class Scholarship, and institutional aid from the college they are attending. The non-SSN contributors should continue to complete the process for account verification with studentaid.gov. And we're going to talk about that process in depth later. Once your non-SSN contributor is able to complete the FAFSA, the student and the contributor should be able to complete and submit it. All right, folks, we have reached our break. So it's 6:39, but let's come back at 6:40. So 5-minute break.
6:45. We'll see y'all at 6:45. Hey folks, it's 6:45, so I'm going to go ahead and pick up here where my colleague Kim left off. My first name is Sarah Beth. I'm the Outreach and Marketing Coordinator for the California Student Aid Commission, and I'm going to be covering the FAFSA and the various issues, barriers, and problems that students have faced trying to complete it. Ultimately, we want everyone to be able to complete the FAFSA if they're able to, but there have been problems. And so we're here tonight to talk about those problems and to help you as best as possible to get through them. Students who are US citizens or green card holders are entitled to complete a FAFSA and to apply for federal and state-based financial aid, regardless of the citizenship status of their parents. So I want to make sure you know that FAFSA is for you, even though there have been a lot of troubles this year. I'm going to turn my camera off because it can be distracting for me, but I'm a real person back here behind the screen with information for you about the FAFSA. So a FAFSA is an application for state aid, like the aid that Kim talked about earlier, but it's also an application for federal aid, including the most well-known program, which is the Pell Grant program. And also some other programs, including Work Study, which is very well known as well. The Supplemental Education and Opportunity Grant, those are all types of financial aid you don't need to pay back. FAFSA is also an application for student loans. And I want to let you know that completing FAFSA does not mean you are agreeing to take student loans. But if you do decide you need to take student loans, we do recommend that you take them from the government instead of from a private bank because the interest rate is better and the ability to repay is better for you on the other side. So the paper FAFSA has emerged as an option for students in the non-SSN contributor group, given all of the problems that exist with the FAFSA right now, and the number of early deadlines that were experienced by students trying to complete FAFSA, especially back in January and February. However, CSAC and the US Department of Education do not recommend a paper FAFSA. There are a number of reasons why that's true. One is that there's no tracking mechanism. So you send your FAFSA to the US Department of Education and you wait, but you don't have any way to tell where your FAFSA is in the process. Another reason is that a lot of people did the paper FAFSA to avoid identity verification, but identity verification for the parents will still be required. It's just that we don't know what that process is going to be like for the paper FAFSA, and so we can't walk you through it. Paper FAFSAs also haven't been processed yet. So even if you sent a paper FAFSA in January or February, they're not going to start processing them until the end of June. Now your submission date is your submission date, which is separate from your FAFSA processing date. So people who sent their FAFSAs in January or February have a submission date in January or February, but their processing date will be later. Good news is that your submission date is what matters for meeting the state priority deadline. So these FAFSAs are on time, but they're very delayed in being processed. There's also no training available on the paper FAFSA. It's a 22-page document, and nobody has been trained in how to fill it out correctly. So professionals like myself and my colleagues are less able to help students and families to complete the application. And then the thing that a lot of people ask us about paper FAFSA is, if I already did it, should I do an online FAFSA? And the answer is that it depends. It depends on your college deadlines and submission dates. So an online FAFSA that's submitted now will be preferred over the paper FAFSA. It'll replace it. And so if you have that paper FAFSA with a January or February submission date on it, you want to leave that paper FAFSA alone if you need that submission date for your college or for the May 2nd deadline. But if you submitted your paper application to avoid identity verification, you can do an online version of it now and then follow the appeals process that Kim talked about to appeal for Cal Grant. So this is a slide that helps walk you through the steps of completing FAFSA. In a perfect world, these would be the 4 easy steps that it takes. What we're seeing, however, is problems at every step of the application process. We're going to be covering each of these steps in detail during this part of the webinar. So everyone who provides information on FAFSA is called a contributor. That's you, your parents, maybe a step parent, and if you're married, your spouse. The first step for all contributors is to have an account with studentaid.gov. And once you have an account, your account needs to be verified. So for people who have a social security number, identity verification is automatic and it happens with the Social Security Administration. But for people who do not have a social security number, they go through a manual identity verification process with the US Department of Education. There was concern that the information was going to be shared with the Social Security Administration, and that's not true for students whose contributors do not have social security numbers. The Social Security Administration only gets involved if there's already a social security number on file. We're going to talk about identity verification in depth in a minute. Once all contributors have an account and that account is verified, then either the student or the parent needs to start the application and invite the other person to it. In some cases, it may be easier for the parent to invite the student, but either way could work. We're going to talk about those different scenarios today. At this point, all of the contributors need to fill out their own separate sections of FAFSA. The student needs to complete their section and sign it. The contributor needs to complete their section and sign it. If you have more than one contributor, everyone needs to complete their section and sign it. And then once you see the congratulations screen, which we will look at, you'll know that your FAFSA has been submitted. In this next part of the presentation, we're going to go through each of these steps with you and highlight the different problems that are happening at each step. We'll also share all of the workarounds that we know for you and answer your questions in the Q&A box. So we're going to start with account creation. That's step 1. Everyone who's going to contribute to FAFSA needs a studentaid.gov account. That includes students, parents, and spouses. So a studentaid.gov account is a free account that allows you to complete and sign FAFSA online. Remember, most students are going to be considered dependent for financial aid, and their parents are going to have to provide information on FAFSA. Parents who do not have a social security number still have to provide information. The deciding factor for who needs a studentaid.gov account is how the taxes are filed. So if the parents are married and they file taxes together, only one parent needs an account, but that parent is going to report for the couple. They're not just reporting themselves, they're reporting for the couple. If the parents didn't file taxes together for any reason, then both parents need an account. That's also true for head of household. Head of household is not filing taxes together. If the parents are unmarried and they live together, both parents need an account. And if the parents are divorced or separated and they're not living together, then the parent who provided the most financial support in the last 12 months is the parent who needs an account. If that parent is remarried, then their spouse's income counts too. And if that parent and their remarried spouse file taxes together, then the parent can report on behalf of the couple, same way as if the parents are married. But if the parent is remarried and they don't file taxes together, then the step parent's going to need an account too. In some cases, a student has one parent with a social security number and the second parent does not have a social security number. Again, it comes down to how the parents file taxes. If the parents are married and filing jointly, then the parent with a social security number should create the studentaid.gov account and complete FAFSA, reporting on behalf of the couple. The parent without a social security number should not need an account. Now, there is a spot on FAFSA that asks for the second parent's name in the place where in the case where students' parents are filing jointly, the second parent's name has to be reported on FAFSA, but it's not an invitation. It looks like an invitation though, and a lot of people are sitting waiting for an invitation that isn't coming. So when FAFSA asks for the second parent's name, if the parents are married, filing taxes jointly, that's not an invitation. It's just reporting the second parent's name. Now, both parents are going to need an account if any of these things are true. If the parents are married and filing head of household, so one parent files head of household and the other parent doesn't. If the parents are married, but they file taxes separately for any reason. And if the parents are not married, but they live together. Now, I want to remind you that marriage here is the legal definition of marriage. Parents who were married in a religious ceremony, but are not legally married, those parents are considered unmarried for the purpose of FAFSA. And so if unmarried parents who are living together, both parents need an account. Remember, once someone has an account, it's theirs for life. If a parent completes the account creation process, they will have that account in future years. The account creation process will ask for your name, your address, your phone number, your email address, and other basic information like that. For parents who do not have a social security number, they might see questions asking to help verify their identity. We do strongly recommend that everyone use a personal email address for their account. You need an email address to have a studentaid.gov account, and we recommend that you avoid using a work email or a school email because you won't always have access to them. We talk to a lot of people who can't get access to recover their account because they used an email address they no longer have access to. So make sure you use a personal email that you can check regularly. Sometimes we see students and parents switch their personal information, whether it's a social security number or a password or using the same email account. All of those are mistakes when creating an account. You need separate emails and you need to create your own passwords so that you understand how to get back into your account. CSAC does not oversee the account creation process. We're a state agency in California, and this is a federal process. And so if you have difficulty creating an account, you will need to contact studentaid.gov for specific help. Their phone number is here on the slide. They also have a live chat feature, and we've been told that the live chat feature is easier to get a hold of them. So you might try live chat on studentaid.gov. They do have help in multiple languages for folks in the room who are listening on the Spanish language channel. Let's talk a little bit about the identity verification process. Once an account is created, the identity of the holder needs to be verified with the U.S. Department of Education. For people who have a social security number, that's happening automatically through the Social Security Administration, and it takes about 2 to 3 days. But people who do not have a social security number need to go through a manual verification process. The biggest news in this process right now is that on April 30th, the U.S. Department of Education said that they were going to temporarily suspend the ID verification process for non-SSN contributors who need to complete FAFSA on behalf of their students. Now, this is great news, and it opens the door for a lot more students to be able to complete FAFSA now. But it does not mean that non-SSN contributors should stop trying to have their account verified. They do still need to get that account verified in order for the direct data exchange to work later on and also for future years. So non-SSN contributors should continue to pursue identity verification, even if they are able to complete FAFSA now. Contributors can log in to their studentaid.gov account to find out if they are eligible to complete FAFSA now. They can go to the personal information page of the account settings, look for the No SSN with a green check, And if you have that, you're eligible to complete FAFSA now, even if you're still waiting for identity verification. Now, we don't know how long this temporary suspension will last, so we do urge everyone to take advantage of it while it is available. When a non-SSN contributor creates a studentaid.gov account, then they might see questions to help verify their identity. These questions include former addresses, employers, phone numbers, or banking relationships. If you get the question wrong, you'll need to submit documentation to verify your identity. But a lot of people also don't get questions at all. And if you don't get questions at all, then you will also have to submit verification via documents. So let's talk about submitting documentation. There are 3 steps here, and this is what most people need to do in order to verify their identity. Most people who don't have a social security number. So the first step is to get a case number, which begins with the letters MAN-VER. The letters MAN-VER stand for manual verification, and it's just the automatic prefix for the case number. Non-SSN contributors who start the process of a studentaid.gov account now are going to get that case number automatically via email. The second step is to sign the attestation form and submit acceptable identification. We're going to talk about both of those things in just a second. And then the Office of Federal Student Aid, that's the U.S. Department of Education, is going to review the documents and then verify the account. Some accounts are being verified without notification. So the account will be verified and nobody hears about it. And so we are encouraging non-SSN contributors to log into their studentaid.gov account regularly to see if they've been verified. This is what the attestation form looks like. It's just 1 page and it's pretty straightforward. You can scan the QR code on the slide, or you can use the web address at the bottom of the page in order to find this form online. It includes your name, your date of birth, your address, and importantly, the MAN-VER case number. The contributor completing the form needs to confirm that they are the person that they say they are, and they should sign and date the form. And then the form needs to be sent with acceptable identification to idverification@ed.gov. That email address is here on the screen, but it's also on the attestation form on page 1. So what is acceptable identification to the U.S. Department of Education? Well, contributors are required to provide either one item from column A or both items from column B. So they can provide a U.S. driver's license, a city or state ID card, or a foreign passport, or they can provide a municipal ID card and a utility bill, a community ID card and a utility bill, or a consular ID card, which is sometimes known as a matricula consular, and a utility bill. All of these documents have to be valid and unexpired. The U.S. Department of Education has been very clear that they will not accept expired identification. So the last thing that I want to let you know on this is that the verification process is not ours. It's the U.S. Department of Education, and they're the ones deciding what documents are acceptable. We haven't heard that they're making any exceptions to this set of documents, but you can always ask if you are in a situation where your contributor cannot come up with one of these documents, or in a lot of cases, a non-SSN contributor might not have a utility bill in their name. So you want to check with the U.S. Department of Education by emailing them or calling them or live chatting them on studentaid.gov to figure out what you might be able to use. If parents have an address in another country, there are a number of issues that they are facing completing the application. This page covers some of those issues, including how to get through the process. So parents with addresses in other countries should complete the account creation process using their foreign address. They should use zeros for their zip code. And then once they create an account, they need to update their mailing address in their account settings and use a temporary US address on the contact information page. It can be the student's address, it just needs to be an address in the US. And then when you invite the parent as a contributor, you need to enter the US address on the invitation screen. After the parent is invited, then they can update their address to their actual address so that FAFSA will show their actual address. But I also want to let you know that every time you log into studentaid.gov, you have to confirm your settings, and an address in another country will stop you from confirming the settings. And so these parents have to change their address back to a US address every time they log in, and then change the address back to their actual address. It's a big hoop to jump through, but this is what the US Department of Education is recommending for these parents right now. Some other barriers that we're seeing for parents who live in another country are account creation errors. Hopefully the steps I've just given you will help you with that. It's also difficult for these parents to call to get a case number. And their acceptable identification might not look the same from another country. Utility bills are handled differently in different countries, and so are identification cards. Some of the workarounds that we know about, none of them a perfect solution, is to use the live chat on studentaid.gov to get a case number. In the account creation, you might try to use a period or a zero for the street address and then edit it later. You can also skip the phone number. It's not a required field in the account creation. And for addresses in other countries, we recommend you use zeros for the zip code. So once the parent's account is verified, or right now while the verification is suspended, you need to invite the contributor to the application. The 24-25 FAFSA is a role-based application, which means each person who contributes to it will complete their own section, and that person cannot see what other contributors have put on the application. So sometimes, remember, spouses also need to be contributors. We're talking a lot about parents, but sometimes a spouse needs to be a contributor as well. So when a student invites a parent as a contributor, they need to use the exact match for the contributor's identification documents, down to periods or spaces. It needs to match the studentaid.gov account exactly. Small things like not spelling out the road or way or boulevard can cause an error. And if you receive an error, you have to wait until the next day to try again. In some cases, the student is able to send the invitation, but either the parent doesn't receive it, or when they do receive it, they're unable to access the FAFSA. So one situation I want to talk about here at the beginning, I mentioned this a few slides ago. Near the end of the FAFSA, there is a place to report a second parent. And this has created a lot of confusion when parents are married and filing taxes jointly. That's because the screen looks like an invitation, but it's not an invitation. It's just reporting parent information. In cases where the parents are married and filing taxes jointly, only one parent needs to complete FAFSA. The second parent's name and demographic information is reported so that it can match the IRS file, but the second parent is not waiting on an invitation to sign. So that's one potential option. Now, there are other cases of missing invitations. One of the first things the student should do is to confirm that they invited the parent using the exact information from the studentaid.gov account, like we just talked about. So if the parent doesn't receive the email, then they should log in to studentaid.gov and try to click on Access Existing Form. That's another workaround that might help the parent get to the invitation. But if the parent does not see the student's form on the studentaid.gov portal, then they might be in the situation of a missing invitation. There are a couple of options at this point. One is the delete workaround, and one is invalidating the contributor account. So let's talk about both of those. Here's the delete workaround. If the parent cannot see the information, even after their see the invitation, even after their information is input exactly as it appears on their studentaid.gov account, this is the first option I would try. It's the delete workaround. This solution has the student delete their FAFSA in the Actions menu on studentaid.gov. You'll go to the Actions menu and go to delete the application or delete the form. Then the parent should log in to studentaid.gov and start a brand new FAFSA as the parent. One of the first screens they'll see when they do that is to invite the student as a contributor. The student will receive the invitation, and then both contributors should be able to complete and sign the FAFSA. We do recommend that non-SSN parents start the application because it may be that the student cannot invite the parent. We are not sure why that is. But I do want to let you know that this will not work if the student has signed and submitted their portion of FAFSA without a parent's signature. This is a reference to a different workaround called the incomplete FAFSA, which the U.S. Department of Education put out at the end of February to try to help students in this situation. And if you have submitted a FAFSA with your signature and your parents' information manually, you cannot go back and delete your FAFSA at this point. So at this point, you will have to consider the invalidate account workaround, which is what we're going to talk about now. So invalidating a studentaid.gov account is a pretty serious setback because the contributor will have to start over with creating a brand new studentaid.gov account. This means going through the verification process again. So you want to ask yourself these questions before you do it. Have you tried to invite the contributor using the exact information on the studentaid.gov account? Are the studentaid.gov account details correct? And has the contributor been unable to find the FAFSA on the portal? So at this point, this contributor may need to invalidate their studentaid.gov account. So they'll do that by following these steps. And if you think this option is for you, I encourage you to take a picture of this slide because these steps are very specific and you're going to want to be able to follow them very specifically. These instructions came directly from the U.S. Department of Education. And so they're the ones who are telling us that this is a potential workaround. So to invalidate your account, you would log into studentaid.gov and go to the settings menu. And then you want to delete your last name on the personal information screen. You'll get a warning about that, but you should select yes and continue anyway. And then you'll go to the contact information page. You'll need to replace the email address with a different valid email address. It has to be a valid email address. That email address also can't be associated with an existing account. You should uncheck the mobile phone option and delete the mobile phone number. And then you should agree to the terms and conditions. And you'll have to follow prompts to verify the new email address. This will invalidate the existing account and mark it for future deletion by studentaid.gov. Then this user can create a new account. And so they'll create a new studentaid.gov account using correct personal information. And that person can then use that studentaid.gov account immediately to complete FAFSA. I want to remind you again that a contributor who invalidates their account does have to go through the verification process again, but that contributor can also complete FAFSA before they finish verification, at least as of right now. So I'm going to cover a couple more issues that contributors might be facing in this section, which is to complete, sign, and submit the application. So this is a common question that we get, the state of legal residence. This question's been confusing for students and parents. Kim covered it in the CADAA section tonight, but despite the wording, this question has nothing to do with being documented or with having legal paperwork in the United States. It's just a question asking about physical presence in a state. So you should report the month and year that the parent came to the state that they live in, and that's their state of legal residence. The student or the parent will be asked questions about the student's parents. If the parent starts the application, they'll get the questions. If the student starts the application, they'll get these questions. You should report information as of the day you're completing the FAFSA. And then this parent wizard will tell you which parents need to complete the application. Here on the right-hand side, you'll see these 3 blue boxes. One of them will come up and let you know which parent needs to complete the application. All FAFSA filers have to consent to direct data exchange. That includes the student and also the parents, and that includes undocumented parents, even if they didn't file taxes in 2022. So everyone has to consent, and if you don't consent, then you will not be eligible, the student will not be eligible for federal student aid. So it's really important to consent to this, even if you didn't file taxes in 2022. Non-SSN contributors, even though they will consent to direct data exchange, they will still need to enter their tax information manually. Even if they did not file taxes, they do have to report their income from 2022. The reason why they have to consent to direct data exchange is because later on, FAFSA will be processing these applications for direct data exchange and to match the manual information provided, and they need consent now to do that. Otherwise, you may run into problems later. The FAFSA uses skip logic, which means you may or may not see one of these pages or both of them. The big things I want to alert you to on these pages are that the value of the home the parent lives in does not count as a real estate investment. So if the parent owns a home and they live in that home, they don't have to report it as a real estate investment. A lot of people do that and then they overinflate their assets and they lose out on financial aid because it looks like they have more money than they do. The other thing here is that it used to be that small businesses had an exemption on FAFSA, but now all businesses, including solo enterprises, and all investment farms have to be reported on FAFSA. You're going to report the net worth of those, which is the value of the business minus debts owed against the business. All of that's written in the gray section here on the FAFSA. You also don't want to report retirement accounts. You don't have to report 401k or other retirement accounts as part of your investments. Parents will be able to review and sign their section, but they can't see the students section and they can't see other contributor sections. So if 2 parents are completing 2 separate sections, they can't see each other's sections. The student will be asked demographic information. The race, ethnicity, and gender questions are all optional. You can choose prefer not to answer. These questions do not impact aid eligibility. They are just for research purposes. You'll also be asked your high school completion status. That question is asking about the future. So make sure you pay attention to it because it's asking about will you be a graduate by the time that the fall semester starts. It'll ask for information about your high school. And then also, if your parent was killed in the line of duty, you should report that. In California, we have a special grant to help students whose parents were killed in the line of duty. We recommend that you list all schools you're considering, up to 20 of them. That way you don't have to go back and make application corrections. However, I also want to remind you that adding a school does not mean you're applying to that school. It also doesn't mean you're committing to go to that school. Remember, like Kim said earlier, this is just to allow students to compare costs. Now, I also want to let you know that sometimes the school name will show up differently than you think it will. So, for example, Cal Poly Humboldt isn't going to show up as Cal Poly Humboldt. You'll have to type out California State Polytechnic Humboldt, I think is actually what you have to type. But you have to search around a little bit sometimes to find the school that you are looking for. This is the student review screen. It's longer because the student section is also longer. And then once the student reviews, they're going to sign. All signatures on FAFSA are a checkbox and a button. There's no place to draw in a signature. So the student needs to sign and the parent needs to sign in order for FAFSA to be considered complete. And then you'll see the congratulations screen. The congratulations screen is what happens when all contributors have submitted their FAFSA, submitted their section of FAFSA. There'll also be an email sent to the student that the student should save for their records. You're going to want that email later on, so make sure you save it. In response to some of the issues facing FAFSA filers, the U.S. Department of Education created what's called an incomplete FAFSA. This is an option for students whose parents have not been able to complete the application. Unfortunately, this workaround does not produce an SAI, and so students cannot receive an estimated award letter doing this workaround. But it is an option for students who cannot get their parents through FAFSA so that they can at least get the ball rolling. The student will sign and submit the FAFSA and manually report parent income. The parent has not completed their section of the application, however. This will get you a submission date to meet deadlines or to allow you to appeal for Cal Grant. But the application cannot be used for an award package until the parent is able to complete and sign it. And you will have to take additional action to complete the FAFSA. This is an option if you can't do CADAA because you're considering applying for out-of-state colleges. So to do it, you complete your section and sign it. Down here at the bottom of the confirmation page, you'll click Provide Parent Information manually, and then you'll input parent financial information and submit it. This does create an incomplete FAFSA with a submission date. The submission date is what matters for financial aid deadlines. So getting that submission date on the books is what matters for you to be able to receive the most possible financial aid. Later on, you'll have to go back and correct your FAFSA and provide your parents' information. Now, this can be once your parents have a verified account or once your parents are able to get through the account creation process. The FAFSA will move from in review to processed status, and the student should receive confirmation that the FAFSA has been processed. Once your FAFSA has been processed, your next step is to talk to the financial aid office at the college. In response to the, as the corrections feature has rolled out, there have been a lot of people who've needed to make corrections to FAFSA. So let's talk about corrections. Every year, students do make corrections to their FAFSA, but this year, a lot of students need to make corrections. And so it seems like a much bigger deal than it is. I just want to let you know, every year students make corrections to their FAFSA, and it's not a big deal. But when you need to fix mistakes, add schools, change answers, or if you do that incomplete FAFSA, you will need to make corrections. I want to remind you that a corrected FAFSA keeps its original submission date. The corrections just add to the record. You should also review the known issues page for FAFSA, because there have been some known issues with the corrections process. Some people had their application disappear. Some people are getting emails even though they've already corrected it. FAFSA is keeping a known issues page. And so if you do have issues with corrections, you want to check in with them about that. This is the slide we're going to send you afterward. It's got some contributor resources that we've covered in today's webinar, including the verification form and what's considered acceptable identification. There's some other stuff on here you might also want to check out, including privacy policies. And there's an email list that we have here at CSAC. And also there's an email list that the U.S. Department of Education has. Both of those email lists are places for you to get additional information as this situation continues to unfold. So there are some other steps that you will need to take while you're waiting for your application to be processed. A lot of people think they apply for FAFSA and that's just it and they get money for college, but there's actually a few other steps we suggest you take. Students should create a Web Grants for Students account. This will allow you to manage your state-based financial aid. This is a free account that is from us, from CSAC, and it helps you to be able to communicate with us. And you can change your school there, you can check your GPA status, your eligibility, and a bunch of other things that you can manage through Web Grants for Students. It's also how we contact you. And so having that account is important for you to get updates from CSAC. Kim mentioned this at the beginning, but CalKids is a program of the State Treasurer's Office. They put aside money for students. They're even starting with newborn students. So if you have younger students in your family, they could also check for this money. But you can go to calkids.org in order to find out if you qualify. When you get to calkids.org, you'll have to put in your information and claim your award. You don't just get this money automatically. You do have to go in and find out if you're eligible. And if you are, you do have to claim the award. Now, if you follow us on social media, you've probably already seen my face before, or my colleagues, Jared or Como. Como makes the memes on our channel. So if you appreciate a good meme, a shout out to Como for that. Our team is actively sharing resources and going live on Instagram and TikTok in order to help answer your financial aid questions. Our goal is to be here to help you fund your educational goals. Lastly, tonight, I want to remind you that CSAC is a national voter registration agency, which means that if you would like to register to vote, you can do so by scanning the QR code on this slide or going to registertovote.ca.gov. Now, if you are 17 and you are eligible to vote in the next election in November, and you're going to turn 18 before then, you can actually register to vote now so that you're all set to go for November. So that's the end of our presentation. I want to thank you for spending some time with us on a Thursday night tonight. Please give some love with the reactions to Kim and Israel, who have been on the line answering your questions. Also to Isidra and Claudia, who are our Spanish language interpreters for this evening, and to Janice Sykes from LAUSD, our partners for tonight's webinar. Give them some love in the chat and some reactions, and we will go ahead and wrap up for the evening. I see my colleagues have answered your questions in the Q&A box. Thank you, folks. We're going to go ahead and end on time tonight. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Take care.